Corey Langsley. The college scandal is just starting with 55 people. The guy at the center singer has said he did this over 700 times. Should the students be immediately expelled? I say yes, if the penalties are pretty steep for fraud, mail, bribery, and collusion. Are we going to see real justice given out to the rich and pretty and famous, or is it all going to be BS and guys like me who paid for every college credit at the community college and state university going to watch another batch of wealthy bastards get away with corrupting the system? So I'm going to assume, although I have not been up on this story super close, that we're talking about this this business where movie stars and other wealthy people basically not only bought admissions into universities, but I'm sure bought good grades. And I say, yay! Yay! I think just another cause for celebration and another reason to feel more optimistic. I'm feeling more optimistic every day. I feel more optimistic every day because every day, with the restraints loosened on them for whatever reason, I guess maybe it's just because we're now in like ninth wave feminism and, fourth wave Antifa and 26th wave, how many letters are there now after LGBT? There's 13 or something. We're still on first wave conservatism, by the way, because pretty much you get it right the first time, and once you get it, you just kind of stick to it. But the thing makes me happy. It actually makes me very happy. It makes me happy when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez talks about socialism and bringing it to the country. Makes me happy when Bernie Sanders is outflanked to the left, and basically all of the emotional support that used to go to him is now going to AOC. He's a better charlatan than she is. She's not a very good charlatan. She's just a gift to the Republican Party. It makes me happy when the left just keeps pushing and pushing and pushing. What was the example from a day or two ago? Once again, the Academy Awards are a great example. Kevin Hart, no, he made a comment one point in the past, and the thought police descended upon him and made their solemn ruling, so he was out. And then they couldn't find anybody who apparently has not been politically correct since the moment they emerged from their mother's womb. So since there's no one politically correct enough or left-wing enough to host the Academy Awards, they had to go without them. And this is where you just get an example of just how pardon the expression, how unsustainable this progressivism is. It's just unsustainable. Because conservatism is generally, mind your own business and go out and, if you want to work hard, make yourself wealthy, you'll make other people wealthy too, but that's not why you're doing it. You basically can go out there and make your life better, and you do make life better for everybody. But when your philosophy is all about taking things, and in order to take things, you need the fig leaf of victimhood as an excuse, and when your entire political philosophy is based on the victimhood food chain and hierarchy, then just like with, Highlander, there can only be one. There can only be one ultimate victim. And watching them struggle to reach that point makes me extremely happy. Viggo Mortensen, who I just absolutely adore, he's a great, great, great actor. I love him in everything he's been in. He's just tremendous. Needless to say, in The Lord of the Rings, a really, really enormously important character to me, and I'm very, very fond of the actor. I remember him just before or just after the invasion of Iraq in 2003, right after Lord of the Rings, the third one came out. He was wearing a no blood for oil T-shirt or something, and I just thought, why do they all have to be so, dumb? But I remember thinking, well, he's a gigantic progressive, and he is. So he wins I don't know. He didn't win Best Actor. The movie he was in, Green Book, won Best Picture. And the producers had the gall to say that we don't think this could happen without Viggo. Viggo saved Lord of the Rings. They had another Aragorn, shot a bunch of scenes with another Aragorn. Just terrible. He went in there and worked with all the extras, and all of the guys who were playing the orcs and the Uruk-hai just loved him and loved him. Just by all accounts, just a great guy. There's a scene in The Two Towers where they're looking for Merry and Pippin, and they come upon this mound of dead orcs that the Rohirrim have just slain, and he's looking around and he kicks this helmet, and out of frustration, because they've been running after these, literally running for like 3 days after these guys, and he actually broke his toe on that take, and you can see it on his face, but he broke his toe and didn't just go down, it just was like, oh, my toe, he manned up and hung in there. So anyway, he's not just an actor. He's a kind of a guy who really can pull a movie together. And when they mentioned it, then all of a sudden, Viggo and everybody else starts getting this avalanche of criticism because this story of a black man and a white man becoming friends gives Americans the wrong idea that racism is something that's in the past. And so the movie about black and white guys working together, which goes immediately to Charlotte, where one person was killed, then that's the movie that should have won, and Spike Lee said so. He said, we don't, he said they made the wrong call. What class? What class? I didn't win Best Picture. I'm effusive when I win Best Screenplay. I don't win Best Picture. I'm going to storm out of the room. Then I'm going to come back, and I'm going to be studiously looking away from the stage, right? I'm not going to even look at the stage to show how awful this decision was on the part of the Academy. So far, so good. So, who's Spike Lee protesting against? Who is Spike Lee, acting out at? It's not like Donald Trump made the decision, and it's not like there are any Republicans or conservatives watching the show even. He was basically playing the black card on the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, which has been played before with great success. So the most left-wing people in the country cannot produce a show that is left-wing enough for the people who they're going to invite to the show. I mean, I can't stand Spike Lee, and I've never seen anything particularly outstanding about his films either. I mean, he's a competent filmmaker, but I've never seen anything that made me say, "Wow, that is a Spike Lee movie." But put that aside. Maybe he's a great filmmaker. He's always been kind of a racist and a bigot. None of this bothers me. It makes me happy. It makes me happy. I love watching the look on people's faces, like Viggo, who gets a pass from me because of the work he's done. But nevertheless, here's Viggo. He's 10 years ago wearing 20. Who am I kidding? 15 years ago, he's wearing a No Blood for Oil shirt that I think he probably put on with a magic marker to show how down he was with the cause. And now he's being called part of the racist problem because he's the white guy who's getting credit for this movie about this black man and this movie that featured a black actor who went on to win the Best Supporting Actor award. That movie is just vilified and utterly condemned all across the Twitterverse and everything. And I just now am at the point, I'm way past the point of being surprised. First I was surprised, then I was appalled, and then I was angry, and now I'm amused. And I'm just getting more and more amused every day. I love it. I love watching it. I love watching, these feminist icons being destroyed by these same young monsters that are trying to destroy everybody else. I love seeing I love seeing Nancy Pelosi being called not liberal enough by the monsters that she and her philosophy have created. That makes me happy. It makes me happy, first of all, because they're terrible people. And while I don't want any physical harm to come to anybody, because I do have a conscience and a soul, I do deeply wish for them to be humiliated out of their own miserable policies that have destroyed so many lives. But I love watching Nancy Pelosi being pilloried for not being left-wing enough. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will be, you will live to see it, will be criticized for not being left-wing enough or radical enough. And on it goes. So basically, this last Academy Awards show, which I didn't watch and neither did anybody else, but this last Academy Awards show was really the end of the Academy Awards. I mean, what's the point? Conservatives gave up on it 20 years ago, and progressives can't even attend their own show without complaining about how it's not progressive enough. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. But back to the university thing. When I read just the top line before I opened it up and I saw the term college scandal, the college scandal is much bigger than this. But it is, what's the word I'm looking for? Let's just say that when I found out that movie stars and wealthy liberals were buying their kids into exclusive schools and buying their grades, let's just say I didn't fall out of my chair with astonishment. This is the kind of people they are, and this is ultimately it. I mean, movie stars are the most visible of the progressives, but it's true for all progressives. They're all the same way. The top level politicians like Nancy Pelosi and Obama, and he's actually, it's like, you remember him? Remember him vaguely? Here's the thing. I've talked many times about how the greatest thing about being a conservative and a spokesman for conservative values is I don't have to be a hypocrite. I don't have to say one thing and then wink and then do the other thing. You get to say one thing, do the same thing. That's a very good feeling. And I've often talked about how liberals progressives don't have, they can't do that. They have to tell people other than what they believe in. But it's just dawned on me just now, thinking about it, that because they've lived a lie, and I've known that they've been living a lie for forever. But it just really, for the first time, dawned on me just how rotten a person you have to be in order to be living a lie for your entire life. And that's when I realized, not for the first time, that's when I realized that if you've got to be, if you're an awful enough person to publicly say I want higher taxes and then tell your accountant to get the best tax break you can, and if you openly say I don't think there should be walls, borders, doors of any kind, and then you have a private security army to make sure nobody steps on your property, all these contradictions. In order to do that, you have to be a really, really awful person. And now we get to the point, which is, wow, this progressivism sure does make a lot of awful people, but that's not it at all. The motivation, here's what drives progressivism. Progressivism is a political philosophy designed to make really awful people feel better about themselves, and mediocre intelligences to feel like they're somehow smarter than everybody else. They simply just, it's not that progressivism makes bad people. It's just that bad people are attracted to this philosophy because it's a get out of jail free card for them, morally and intellectually. And so when you watch this thing being let loose, it causes a certain amount of satisfaction. And there are people, I'm not happy about the damage that's being done at all, But I am looking forward to talking to somebody who calls himself an open socialist after what we're seeing in Venezuela. More reports about how the Scandinavian countries are essentially just collapsing, and then there's Portland and San Francisco, which are just horrible. I saw that a health inspector said that the streets of San Francisco, which was once a pretty decent weekly TV drama, that the streets of San Francisco are more of a danger in terms of disease and filth vectors. That that this is, that there are scientists that go around in Center for Disease Control and World Health Organization and all the rest, and they basically go through towns and measure how much bacteria is just in the general environment, in the water, on doors, on lampposts, and all the rest of it. And this guy said San Francisco is far more filthy than Nairobi, Istanbul, Cairo, far more. And since this philosophy is so counter reality, and since it's all based on virtue signaling, and since there's no end to virtue signaling, since the virtue signaling has to continue, and you have to keep topping people in terms of, what's the point of being a progressive if you don't get to tell everybody how much better you are than everybody else? So they cannot stop. See, this is the thing that actually is making me feel much, much better lately. Yes, it's been growing and it's been getting worse, but as it mutates and continues to run, the inevitable consequences of this philosophy become more and more clear. And then after the consequences become clear, then the motivation becomes clear. So San Francisco and just the bags of human feces not just bags, just human feces on the street. So how does this work? What's the dynamic? This is how I think it works. You've got liberals that live in San Francisco, and they like it because it's a beautiful city, and they don't have to put up with 7-Eleven. So far, so good if you're one of those horrible control freak people. Okay, so you keep electing more and more progressives to the city council. Great. And they start getting more and more progressive in terms of the city's policies. And you think, great. And then they start doing things like, we want to be a sanctuary city for illegal aliens. And that makes you feel great, because you're doing something really good for poor brown people who've been oppressed by the Yankees for so long. When I say doing good for them, I don't mean doing actual good for them. Certainly not sending them money or giving them a place to live, because that would be, actual commitment. But when I say doing something good for them, what I mean is telling people that they're doing something good for them. So they have these politicians that say that San Francisco should be a haven for illegal aliens, and you get a lot of illegal aliens. It says we should be a haven for the homeless because we're morally superior to everybody else. And so it becomes a destination for the homeless. And now it starts to get to be kind of fun. Now the people that have voted for all of these policies are now surrounded by a lot of crime, a lot of violence. Haight-Ashbury is apparently an extremely violent place now, just lots of fights going on. And these progressives are looking around at each other and they're saying things are worse, but they can't admit they're worse. And so they simply just suck it up and they say, well, at least we're doing, the right thing. And then these progressives who they've elected over time, which become more, it's a strain that just becomes more and more virulent with every election. Now, the city says, well, we're not. It's racist, it's classist, and everything else to force people to defecate in private. If you don't have a home, how can you be expected to defecate in private? And so, we're going to no longer make it a crime just to drop your pants and take a crap on the streets of San Francisco. See how morally advanced we are? And now they're trapped. They've always been trapped. Once you buy into this philosophy, there's no getting out of it. So now they have to agree to this too. because the guilt card and the victimhood card that they have backed for so long is now being played against them. And now these people are walking through their neighborhoods, which are suddenly not, groovy places anymore with little coffee shops. Now they're violent places, and there's just endless deposits of human filth on the sidewalks. There's a website that you call and hope to get the city to come and remove this stuff. And I think somebody said they get 20 an hour or something like that. People just taking photographs and posting it, saying, hey, here's the corner of this and this. Can somebody come clean it up, please? Okay, so we can't come clean it up. Why? Because we don't have enough money. The city doesn't have enough money. Really? No. We're very strapped for funds. Your tax base is Silicon Valley. You've got the richest people in the country there. It's one of the most expensive cities in the world to live in. What do you mean you don't have enough money? We just don't have enough money to do it. We need more money. And then what happens is, then the progressives, the rich progressives, who are the ones that have bought into this philosophy and who elected like the Pelosi's and the Jerry Browns and all the mid-level progressives, then looking around at what's become of their lives, they decide that they can no longer live in San Francisco because San Francisco is populated by people who are, in many cases, just plain barking mad and need to be in mental institutions. But when they're not, they're knifing people and mugging them and going through their trash and crapping on their doorsteps. And so they leave. And all of this is perfectly understandable. And it's also, this is also understandable from their point of view. So they go to some clean place like Boise, let's say, and they're out with the squares in red country, and they keep expecting to see all the racism. They don't see it. Doesn't matter. They're progressive, so they start voting like progressives. And as more and more of them leave San Francisco and move to places like Boise, they get more and more support, and they keep voting for the policies that turn San Francisco into what it is. And now they're going to try and turn Boise into what San Francisco was. At which point they will then pull up stakes and go somewhere else. It is literally fouling your own campsite. I mean, that's really just the literal definition of it. The literal definition of don't foul your own campsite is don't, crap where you eat. So they've had these policies that have put this stuff in place in San Francisco and in Portland. In Portland, they're letting Antifa direct traffic. There's a video of this nasty, typical early 20s fat chick dressed in black, and she's cut her hair with a lawnmower, and she says, turn left over here. And the guy says, who are you to tell me what to do? Just do it. And so when he doesn't do it, then they, bang on his car and scream and tell him what a Nazi he is for, asking what authority this mob was ruling the streets by. That's the Nazi way, is to question authority. And so Portland's unlivable. And there you go. Now, one extra special, delicious nicety about this is, since this has been happening for 30 or 40 years, and I got out here in the late 80s, even in the late 80s, there were bumper stickers that said, don't Californicate Oregon. So from the 80s, Californians have been moving up to Oregon and turned it into what it is now. And now the progressives are, the Antifa progressives and all the rest of these the homeless people are not bad people in most cases. They're just mentally disturbed or facing severe addiction. I'm talking about the Antifa radicals. Those people are not nice people. And now they're defacing cars. When somebody moved into a house in Oregon and had California tags on there, and they basically said, go back to California and get the hell out of here. You you California conservatives, you. So when major cities like San Francisco and Portland decide that they're not going to enforce the law, you begin to see what life under this progressive ideology looks like. And it looks like needles and human feces on the streets that used to be beautiful. And the faster this happens, the better it is. I was thinking about this too when I was looking at some of these pictures from Portland and stuff. And I realized, letting people do what they want in public. I'm all about letting people do what they want in private. It's none of my business. But letting people just simply do what they want in public, block traffic, tell people to turn left or right, it's so much less effort than it is to actually run something. And this is another reason why I'm feeling much better lately. The reason we're fighting this policy is because this policy is the policy of chaos and lawlessness. That's why people tend to drift in that direction. The grass grows and gravity pulls things down, and Russ never sleeps. But it's so much more easier to have chaos than it is to have order. It's a lot less pleasant, but it's a lot less work. And this is ultimately what this whole thing is about. When you really get down to it, if you really, really look at what these these progressives have in common, I really think this is the single great unifier of all people who are really progressive is they're fundamentally lazy. They don't really do anything. They're the kind of people that are just constantly, their job is to protest. I mean, really, that's the occupation. We were looking at what was it on the right angle? We were looking at the socialist dating site in New York, and it was run by two women. One who was 35, who is a graduate student, not a teacher, still a student at 35, living in college, and the other one occupation was listed as organizer. And what does that mean? So Red Yenta, thank you. So what does that mean? It's which do you think is harder to do, being an engineer or being an organizer? You don't even have to do anything to be an organizer. You just claim you're an organizer. I've been meant to link a couple of these, and I'll do it in the near future. But I don't know if any of you have seen this. Guy's one of my favorite guys on the internet. It's called Ultra Spiritual Life, and the guy, I think the web channel is Awaken with JP. But basically, this guy's a red-haired, long-haired hippie, and he's a comedian, and he's got to be pretty conservative because he does the best job of deconstructing how this thing works, how they think. It's Awaken with JP, and it's got Ultra Spiritual Life, and basically he says how typical example of his shows would be how to become gluten intolerant. As a matter of fact, I'm going to look up a couple of the titles just to give you an idea. I can't recommend him highly enough. He's very funny, and it's so basically it's watching a progressive be a progressive, and he talks about the actual motives. He says that the reason you should not pay attention to your children is the more you ignore them, the easier they are to control, and then it just gets better and better and better from there. He talks about the advantages of passive aggressiveness and all of this stuff. Let me just see here. Sorry. It's spacebar. I'm going to have to unbind that. Anyway, now we have audio back. So I'm looking at his things, and it's like the Craigslist shaman. So he talks about, he basically is a shaman, pretends to be a shaman, talking to clients about what he's going to offer them for $19,999. And he's offering them what these Craigslist shamans really do offer them. That's why it's so good. How to become gluten intolerant. Uh, Hang on. I think my favorite is if meat eaters acted like vegans. That's very, very good. How to get Instagram famous. Oh, this is the one I wanted to post. Was how to get offended, and it's great. The um, the how to be offended video is just absolutely perfect. He's just the thought process is like, first of all, you find yourself without a job a lot of times. Secondly, find somebody you don't know anything about. Third, accuse them of being the worst creatures on the earth. Demand their on and on. It's great. It's really, really good. So I recommend that very highly. But so anyway, the college thing. I'm happy to hear it. I made a decision. I want to say a little over a year and a half ago, that I was not going to do universities anymore unless it was a specifically conservative school, because I'd seen it for I'd done 4 or 5 years of just eye rolling and virtue signaling, but being shouted down is just it's not like it's simply a waste of my time, and I'm not going to give them the satisfaction, and I am looking forward to colleges, universities. They're going the way of the dinosaur. They are they're obsolete. JP has one about having a college degree, and how it should be given him. How is he supposed to feel superior to other people since he's got his college degree when he can't get a job other than as a barista? So it's all just kind of coming apart because it has to. It has to come apart. Socialism has to come apart. You can't give away stuff for free. Progressivism has to come apart because you cannot make a career by not doing anything. They're just plain done. And I say good riddance. Just imagine my shock. Now, when the entire university system does actually collapse, and it will, then I suspect that out of the ashes will come a collection of either online or private entities that will have the radical idea of providing an education at as low a price as possible, free of political indoctrination, because I suspect there's a market for that. There you go. And as Roy Hamill points out, you can make a career from not doing anything. Reference AOC. Yeah, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had a little time as a bartender. Bernie Sanders has 3 houses. He's never had an actual job in his life. Barack Obama had worked for a short period of time in a fast food joint, but that was the only job he ever had. And they just simply don't do anything. And as a person who is a theater major, I can tell you that it's a lot more fun and a lot easier to be in a field where you don't have to do anything. Good acting is hard, and good production and good writing, all that's not easy. But in terms of what the day looks like, it ain't medicine or engineering. It's not rocket surgery. It's politics for lazy people, and for people who are lazy and want other people's stuff, and people who are kind of stupid but want to feel smart. Pretty simple, really. Moving on.